What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Quigley, bringing the latest tips, tricks and techniques for all your contemporary painting and drawing needs, and welcome back to another video. Before I even get into the video, I just want to say a massive apology not getting this content out a little bit sooner. I've been teaching this week and it's just been hard to juggle everything at the moment, but don't worry, rest assured I will be getting out some more content in the next few weeks. Now, this video, it all relates back to a scheme of work that I did based on my surroundings. If you haven't seen those videos, should I say, I'll put a link up in the description above and you can catch those first. This video is actually the finale. We're actually going to be creating a final piece. And the artist that we looked in particular was based on an artist called Michael Craig Martin. So if you're interested in that, then absolutely fantastic. Now, one thing that I do want to go into this video is I've tried to use the cheapest materials possible. There is going to be no extravagant materials that I've used in here. And also it's almost like a fail-safe technique for all abilities. So you're not going to see a lot of trickery in here. And to be honest, you might think to yourselves, you might do it a little bit different. But I was trying to almost give myself an element of doubt when if anyone of any ability was trying to work in this, how could it be rectified and solved and you know, play a part in creating a decent outcome in the end. So if you're worrying about why have I done this video a little bit different or using the materials in a certain way, then that is the reason. Now, I've already been talking way too much, and this video is just going to be like a normal one. I'm just going to basically narrate my way through it, and then you can follow the steps as I get on with it. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Okay, so we're ready to start. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a grid over the top of this piece of paper. Now, the paper is A3 in size, and if you're unfamiliar with weights of papers, this is 140 GSM, which is nothing too thick, but it will withstand a bit of wet materials such as the paint that we're going to be using today. Now, the grid technique that I'm using on here is a triangle grid technique, and if you're unfamiliar with this type of grid, then I will put up in the description above because I have done a video before on it. And the reason why we'd use a grid is just to help with proportion and scale. And for anyone that's struggling or finds a drawing to draw freehand intimidating, a grid is a fantastic thing for them to do without worrying about if they're going to get their drawing right or wrong. Now here I'm recreating the same grid that I did on the A3 piece of paper on this A4 image. The photograph that I've taken is just a tub of paint. And the reason why I've chosen that is just the previous videos from my surroundings, I was looking at tubes of paint as well. So I thought I'd just stick with the same theme. Now, once you've got the grids both on these images and the piece of paper, I'm going to just lightly sketch out my drawing using a pencil, just taking my time, trying to recreate a decent representation of the image. Now, as you work through the image there, you will see some sketchy lines which can be removed later on, so just try and get the proportions correct. Any adaptations can be altered later on as long as you're drawing lightly. Just remember that, please draw lightly, and then everything can be rubbed out afterwards. Now, as I'm working back in here, I'm being a little bit more refined, just taking my time on the lines, trying to make sure it is. And I'm actually using a ruler because they are straight lines. You know, there's no wrong in it. If you've got straight lines in your drawing, feel free to use a ruler to help you out. It will help with the drawing. Now, I'm just rubbing out some of the sections on there, and I'm using this rubber. And it's not the best rubber to use, so I decided to use another one. And this is a good trick. I've just used a craft knife just to craft the edges off. I don't know if you've ever tried to want to get a really neat edge or small area to rub out. There, I've just got a really nice crisp edge. Really good for actually doing portraiture hair, if you ever want to do that, but completely unrelated to this one. So as I keep on drawing back in with the rubber, rubbing out elements, just making sure I'm happy with the drawing, I'm actually going to start working in with a pen because I want to make sure that the lines are concrete and neat and tidy, and also visible because we are going to be placing paint over the surface, which I'll explain later. So as I'm working back in here, I'm just working freehand over my lines, trying to making sure that when I do a line, I'm not going back and forward. Okay, always make sure you're going forward so you always get that nice smooth transition of the line instead of being really sketchy. And then once the pen has started to dry, it doesn't take very long. If you're wondering what pen I'm using, it's just a rollerball / fine liner, not a very expensive one at all. I can then rub out all the lines underneath. Now you'll see when I'm rubbing it out, I'm actually rubbing in one direction. I don't know if you've done this previously, but if you go back and forward very rigorously, you will tend to scrumple up the paper and then annoy yourself. So please just make sure you're very careful. Just do it in one direction and you should create a nice, keep that paper nice and flat. Now I'm coming towards the end of that one. Now I'm going to be using some block paints. I don't know if you've used these before, but they're really useful, extremely cheap materials to use, and sometimes trying to make paintings from these can be difficult. So here I've just got the primary colours plus a white, and we're looking at Michael Craig Martin's work. He uses a lot of pastel colour, so we need to use a lot of white within here. Now if you've never used these cut paints before, please use a lot of water just to get the paint aggravated, because it is a solid pigment and you really want to kind of work back into it there. Once you start seeing the bubbles, that's when you're kind of ready to go. And I'm just adding water as I go along there. Just make sure you do enough. Now here I'm just going to go back and forward. Now you can see the lines still showing through, and that's important. Okay, so don't do it too thick. You really need to have those lines showing through for later on in the piece of work. Now as I keep on going, you'll see that I'm also not keeping within the lines. If you are struggling to keep in the lines, then this project is going to be for you, because you don't have to worry about that, because we are going to cutting it out afterwards. You can be really relaxed as long as you're going in a uniformed manner back and forward. Then that's going to be a lot easier for you. Now, as I had to mix up a little bit of paint there, you can probably see a different hue of colour. So that's important. Try and mix up enough colour to coat all of your objects so it's all got the same transition of colour on there. Now I'm going to leave that to dry, use the hairdryer, and then what I've decided to do is use another colour, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm just going to rinse those out, make sure that I've got nice clean paints, got a nice clean paintbrush ready for my next coat of colour. Now as I work back into the paint, I've started to go for a bit of a darker colour, using similar tones to the previous colour, but just altering it so the colours kind of harmonise together. They're not complete contrasts of each other, they're just on the same colour palette. Now as I again add some more water, making sure that I've got enough to coat all the areas that I want to. I'm going to be a little bit more careful just on a couple of lines, and that's the reason for that is just so we've got a nice neat edge. Now if you do mess up a little bit more, don't worry about it. We are going to be using some pen over the top, which can also hide a lot of areas of mistakes. Now you can see there I've just used the side of the paintbrush, and that's what you can do. A lot of people kind of use the tip of the paintbrush. If you press the paintbrush down flat and just look at the side of it, you'll tend to get a decent outcome. Just watching that line going across there, that's probably going to be your best bet if you want to get that. Now I've done how to go doing the bottom bit. There's a couple of other areas of the tub of paint that I need to do also in this colour. I'm just making sure that I'm doing a nice smooth application of colour. Try and go back and forward, try not work into circles or press down too hard with the paintbrush. And you see that I've flipped over the paintbrush going back and forward. That's because there's paint on the other side, so really neat trick. Make sure you use both sides of the paintbrush when using the paint on there. Now I've not got long left here, just putting these colours on. As I say, this bit is taking a little bit more time, a little bit more care, but again on the edges of the piece of work you don't have to worry about those, so shouldn't be too much on that one. Now the next thing, let it dry, use a hairdryer or let it dry on a radiator, and then you're going to cut it out. Take your time, make sure you get a decent outcome. Now at the moment it's looking a little bit more like the tube of paint, but it's just lacking a little bit of detail and interest and contrast within a line. And Michael Craig Martin uses actually tape to recreate his black lines. Today I'm just using a permanent marker. Now as I'm using the permanent marker, try and make sure you put it on a surface which you don't worry about it too much. That's why I've just put a piece of paper underneath there. If any of the permanent marker goes on there, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, don't put it on any tables because it might not come out. Now again, please take your time, making sure that you don't do any really sketchy lines. The line must only go forward, and that's where you're going to get a much neater outcome. Now as this is starting to take shape, I've realised that the ellipses on the bottle aren't the best, but I've done this only for demonstration purposes. Now as I'm just making sure that all my paints are all thoroughly washed out, Start thinking about the background. So here I've decided to use a red because it contrasts with green. If you know about your colour wheel, opposite colours on the colour wheel contrast, and if you look at Michael Craig Martin's work, he does a lot of contrasting colours. So I'm just adding a little bit of white just to make it a little bit more opaque. But yeah, I'm just going the same manner as I did before, get another A3 piece of paper, just going back and forth, just coating the whole lot just in a flat colour. Now you will see some areas of lighter and darker on there. You can take your time a little bit more. I was, again, just doing it for demonstration purposes. And as you can see there now, I've got that beautiful contrast between dark and light, but I felt there's still some elements that needed to be added because it was a bit empty. And a good way to refine your drawing and get some darker tones in there is actually using some colour pencil, and because there's a bit of a bite to the paint, the colour pencil actually latches onto the paint really well. And here I'm just going next to the black lines, just going from dark to light, so I've got some areas of contrast and also make the colours more vivid. Now as I continue putting some colours on here, you can see that I'm using a darker green, and for the teal in certain sections I decided to use a blue. Now I've only got limited colour pencils. If you've got a better colour palette of pencils, you might want to decide to choose a more closely matched colour. Now what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to carry on finishing this off, and you can watch how it progresses. Now, as we progress further forward into this piece of work, if you are a student or teaching the grid method and it's just too difficult, this is a very simple way of achieving a similar look. Here I've just got some everyday objects that I found in the art department, and I'm just tracing around the outline of the images. And at the moment it doesn't look very special, but what I've decided to do is use the same method as before, using the permanent marker around the object, and then use a coloured pencil, just almost like a halo or an outline, going from dark to light into the background. And it just really integrates some shapes into the background here, and really accessible for all. So if you're worried about the grid is a little bit too technical, then that's where you go. And that's where I'll leave it, guys, for you to see. Here you can see the finished product. I put a little bit more shading on there. I could have put a few more objects in there, but this is just good for demonstration purposes. And I've also, really got that colour pencil on there. I had a go at doing another one of a pair of trainers. Did the similar thing, just testing it out, see what it would work, and it worked out quite well. Well, that's it, guys. Another tutorial done. Hopefully you found it enjoyable. Hopefully it was informative. And also, if you do have limited materials and you're struggling to maybe make your paintings or drawings look interesting and yet refined, then hopefully that was very useful for you. And if it has, and it was of value, please get in the comments and give us a like. I really do appreciate that. So until the next video, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.